All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this week's Agentforce study group. My name is Lia Williamson. I'm a lead Salesforce product owner at Caterpillar, and in today's session, I will be walking you through Agentforce concepts. All right, the main topics for today are around how agents work and the reasoning engine, managing Agentforce user security, and how to deploy agents to production. So starting off with how agents work and the reasoning engine behind the agents. So as we learned in the prior week session, the agents are using machine learning and natural language processing to make sense of your conversation and questions and requests, but they're also using everything you see on the slide in order to fully function. So I want to walk through these attributes at least at a high level. So first, of course, your data. The agent needs data in order to function. They need to understand your org, your customers, your org's data in order to be able to respond and process the questions. With the agent level access to the data, you're able to configure the level of access you provide the agent. So you determine if you want the agent to have access to all customer data in your org or all contacts, all cases, etc. And agents can use structured or unstructured data from within your org or from external sources. They also require reasoning to function and to process the requests. And Salesforce is using the Atlas reasoning engine for Agentforce. I'll dive into that a little bit more on the next slide. But the reasoning is really the brain behind the agent. This allows the agent to think deeply and understand the questions and requests. And then, of course, they need actions and topics. So the actions are really what the agent will perform. Are they updating a case? Are they summarizing a case? Are they generating an email? And then the topics, providing more context of what are those business processes that they are assigned to? Is it an agent for sales or is it an agent for service, et cetera? And then, of course, the channels. You must deploy this somewhere so it can be used by your users or by your customers, whether that's directly in your Salesforce org or through text messages, etc. So as promised, a bit more about the Atlas reasoning engine. So with Agentforce, Salesforce is using the React prompting model or reasoning and acting, which is more of an interactive decision-making model. And this is using a stepwise planner. So it is relying on a step-by-step process for an agent to follow. But this also seeks user feedback throughout the process, which allows it to be a little bit more fluid and conversational-like. When they first came out with this product, they were using COT or chain of thought reasoning, which is more of like a traditional chatbot model where the agent is only relying on just step-by-step instructions. But what happens is if the user deviates from that process throughout the conversation, the agent doesn't know what to do. And I think we've all kind of experienced that with traditional chatbots, whether it's like you as an end user on a customer service site, or if you're on the implementation side and trying to roll out a traditional bot, it's like all of a sudden it just keeps asking the right question or the same question over and over again. Can I return your order for you? Can I return your order for you? And you're like, no, that's not what I want to do. So that's a bit frustrating. So with the React prompting model, this helps really eliminate those scenarios so it can be more fluid and conversational-like. Additionally, the reasoning is using topic classification. So that's a bit of what I mentioned on the prior side. The agent has to be assigned topics so that way it understands the actions that it needs to do and the business process that it relies on. Agentforce is also using LLMs for responding. So this really comes into play with the React prompting because this allows for that conversational response, and the LLMs are using conversation history. So if the user shifts context throughout the conversation or maybe starts to ask a different question, it doesn't get stuck because it allows the agent to loop through the conversation history and kind of think on its feet. And then lastly, the thought and reasoning. If you played around with Prompt Builder, you would have seen this, this reasoning option that's on the left-hand side of the screen when you're previewing the prompt. It's explaining why it provided the data that it did. It's telling you based on the prompt, I was told to summarize the case or update this field for this case number. So it's telling you why it did what it did, which is very helpful because this is great on the implementation or admin and developer side. So you can really fine tune your agent to understand, do I need to tweak my prompt? Do I need to tweak my topics? But this is also nice as like an end user. Like I know when I use ChatGPT, I've noticed that recently they have a reasoning option. So it will explain why it gave you certain items. So it's just kind of interesting if you're using ChatGPT for like planning a trip somewhere or other things, it will tell you, why did it provide this level of information? And then over on the right-hand side of the slide, I was studying this week and last week with Branda, and she shared this slide that she actually caught at Dreamforce last year when they were announcing Agentforce. And I thought this was just like a nice way to visualize what's happening with the reasoning engine. So I wanted to share that here as well. So kind of showing how Data Cloud is retrieving data, it's pushed into the reasoning engine. So it's thinking and responding, and then it's taking action using your CRM data or other channels, responding with an outcome, and then looping back through again, right? Because ideally this is conversation based and not just one action that's taken. But one note and call out there, as I've been looking through the Agentforce materials and kind of thinking through how Salesforce was originally branding this product, a lot of their messaging and even the way they displayed this on this slide made it seem like Data Cloud is a requirement to use Agentforce. But what I've dug and kind of found out about is that Data Cloud certainly enriches the experience. It fuels Agentforce. It is a great asset to have, but it's not required if you're only trying to use the data within your CRM org. Now, for most larger enterprise companies, you want to use Data Cloud because you want to pull in unstructured data from ERPs or order management system, master data management systems, whatever it may be. So it certainly helps with this experience. But in case that does come up on the exam at all, looks like Data Cloud is not required, but certainly helps enrich the agent. All right, and then I want to chat a little bit about the out-of-the-box agents. So with Agentforce, you will get 6 out-of-the-box agents available for you by default, and then you can also choose to build a custom agent. So they've split it up a little bit by cloud. The first 2 being more general and generic, the Agentforce Agent Default, which is meant to be used within your org to help access information, maybe summarize relationships or forecasts. And then the Agentforce for Setup, which is more for like an admin or developer persona to help with everyday admin tasks, asks help from Salesforce help. And then the next 4 are really more business process focused, 2 for sales, 2 for service. The 2 for sales, Sales Coach and SDR, they have a slightly different twist of one of them is helping to provide that real-time coaching and helping our reps prepare for their deals or proposals, versus the SDR is really like a sales development rep where they are trying to reach out to leads, answer common questions, schedule meetings. And then on the agent side, or sorry, on the service side, the service agent is more of like your customer service rep. And then the service planner helps to resolve cases faster. So it's really like an aid to your human customer service rep to help them solve questions or cases faster. All right, moving on a bit to the user security piece. Always a fun topic. For this example, I'm going to walk us through some key players just to help tie all of the permission sets together. There are several permissions and permission sets needed for the various players. So I thought this might be an easier way to understand this. So in the example we'll walk through, we will have our human end user. In this case, it would be a sales rep. So it'll be Ziggy. And then we'll also have our human system administrator or developer, Cody. It's not required to hold a cat while you are setting up an agent, but it is highly desirable. So that's why he's holding a cat there. And then for our agent, we have Astro. So this is a highlight of some of the permission sets that are available out of the box for both the human and developer end users, but also for, this is very helpful to hold the cat, but then also for the agent. And then I've linked some additional ones here at the bottom too. So just to walk through a few. So for the agent, if we're setting up a sales agent, you'll decide, are you setting up an SDR agent or are you setting up a sales coach agent? If you're setting up SDR, you'll need Agentforce SDR agent permission set. Even though these come out of the box, you still have to assign the permission sets to the agent. So that's just very important to call out and to note. And then for the agent managers, like your admin, Cody, if Cody's going to configure this SDR agent, he would need the configure Agentforce SDR agent. Or if he's going to set up the sales coach agent, he would need manage sales coach agent. Unfortunately, I noticed these are named a little bit differently. I wish that it would be more consistent of either always configure or always manage for the admin persona, but for some reason it is not that way, so that's a bit confusing. And then lastly, for the sales rep. So for the end user of the agent, if they're going to use SDR agent, they need to use Agentforce SDR agent, or if they're going to use sales coach agent, they would need to use sales coach agent. So like I said, several permissions here, a few more for setup and for service as well. I provided links below because they go into a little further detail. I'll pull up one example. I'm switching tabs here, so hopefully you can now see this help article. This link walks through configuring service agent managers. So I spent a lot of time on this slide talking about sales, but wanted to highlight some things about service as well. This article walks through the permissions that are needed to build and manage a service agent. So like that admin persona, you would need either manage Agentforce service agents and manage AI agents or customize application. So take a look through those links because they will walk through the exact permission sets needed. And then in some of the articles, they also walk through the permissions that are included in the permission set, which is nice to know because if you're creating a custom agent, you may choose to bring over some of those permissions, like maybe creating tasks or access to inbox if you're creating maybe like a custom type of sales agent. So very helpful links. So I know that was a lot of information on the last slide, so just want to walk through another example here. So in this example, Ziggy, who is our sales rep, she would like access to an agent that can help her refine her sales pitches before presenting a proposal to a prospect. So what type of permissions are required to enable this use case? So a little pop quiz here, but no worries, we won't be graded. So if we want to walk through these, thinking back to the examples we walked through, this will be for a sales coach agent. So does anyone know what permission set Ziggy would need as the end user sales rep to access sales coach agent? And if not, no pressure.
The user agent permission.
Very, very close. Yep, use sales coach agent. All right, and then same thing for system admin or developer. Anyone remember the name of that permission set?
I took a screenshot, so I'm cheating, but it's manage sales coach agent.
Perfect. And then for the agent, for sales coach agent.
I can cheat again if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Agentforce sales coach.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So those ones are somewhat straightforward once you take a look at them, but can be a lot to remember. So I honestly will be curious to see how the exam is, if they will ask us to name off those exact permission sets, because I feel like some of their exams tend to be like that, and they try to trick you with some of the phrasing. So I'll be very curious to see how that goes, and I'll try to memorize that table. All right, a few other notes about the permissions with Agentforce. So agents will respect the org-wide access and user permission settings of the requester or the end user. So like in that Ziggy example, if she's using that sales coach agent, it's only going to return information to her that she has access to, which is great from a security perspective. But then another important note is that you need to grant the agent with access to any objects or permissions to run flows, or like I said, even the specific agent permission set in order for them to properly function. That really comes into play, especially as you're creating custom agents. Make sure that if you're creating flows that are updating cases or doing any type of action, that you are assigning that within the permission sets. All right, and then last section, wrapping up with deploying the agent. So when you're ready to finally deploy your agents from sandbox to production environment, you can follow two methods using change sets to create an outbound change set from your sandbox environment and then inbound change set within your production environment. Or what will probably be the most common route would be going through and using Metadata API. And this allows you to use common DevOps tools like Copado, like GitHub, etc., to migrate your changes through environments. I think especially if you're at a larger enterprise or you have more complex use cases, this is typically the most common route that I see people do. And you're able to use that method for Agentforce as well. But one really important note here is just to ensure that you're deploying all of the related metadata as you're deploying your agent. Because as I mentioned, you have to assign those permission sets. So make sure you're including the permission set in the pull requests and the commitment and everything. Also, any flows you create, if you're creating any custom fields, all that good stuff, it's all highly tied together, so must be deployed together. This was just a nice little visual that Branda and I found online as well that just shows all the dependencies between the actual agent. So all important pieces to make sure you are deploying in your package. All right, and then just a little wrap up now, another fun knowledge check. So which of the following is not one of the standard agents included with Agentforce? A, B, C, or D? I got maybe one more second. All right, correct answer is B, Agentforce for marketing. The other three are available out of the box. So Agentforce for setup is the one that's more of like the admin or developer persona to help with administrative tasks. Agentforce SDR is a sales development rep. And then D, Agentforce default, that's the default agent that comes in the org, best for internal personas. All right, so that's everything I have for today, guys. Let me know if there are any questions. If not, I'll stop sharing.
Lia. Appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.